Well, my family wanted to record some of my thoughts as far as outdoors and different experiences, and especially on survival. And we're here. It's May the 30th on a Friday. I'm up here in Brighton, Massachusetts, visiting my daughter and grandchildren. And they decided that they wanted me to say a few things about survival. Now, a lot of these things I've never read in a book or I've never really learned other than my own experiences. And one of the first things about survival is your mental attitude. Because if you're not mentally equipped to handle an adverse situation, then you're going to have problems. And probably the first thing to do if you're ever in a situation that you have to survive in the woods is to stop and sit down and think before you act. Some of the basics of surviving is the fact that you can go without food for 3, 4 days, or even longer, without dying. As far as liquids, it depends on your situation. 3 days, 4 days, you can go without drinking anything. So there you are. You got a 3, 4 day cushion that you don't have to worry about anything as far as staying alive if you're healthy. And one of the first things you got to think about is shelter, because after you sit down and you decide that you're in a situation that your body might be put to a test, you have to be sheltered in the fact that you're not going to be too cold or too hot or too wet, because those things can cause more problems than starving to death or become too thirsty. Because if you're comfortable in your body, then you'll be able to think properly. So what you do if you're lost, or if you're put in a situation where you're lost your gear, or you upset your canoe, or you had to crash an airplane or something like that, where you're out by yourself, or you get lost in the woods, sit down, because and spend a couple hours just to assess the situation. Say, well, where am I? What am I going to do? And what are my options? Because you have many options. One option is if you're healthy and you know about where you are, you might be able to walk. But you can only walk so long with your health. Not only that, but darkness will set in, and it's not good to walk in the dark because you injure yourself. Now, if you injure yourself in trying to survive, that puts a black mark on the situation, because if you're injured, then you got to take care of that. So the best thing to do is take care of your body first. Like I said, shelter is the most important thing. Once you find shelter, you can improvise. And improvisation is probably a name of the game too. Because a lot of things you can use in the forest or in the woods or in the ocean or wherever you might be on the beach that you can improvise to give yourself shelter. And you could probably come up with a myriad of ideas of how you can do that yourself, depending on where you are. And once you've developed the shelter aspect, then you can be comfortable. And when you're comfortable, you say, now how am I going to get out of this situation? First of all, you say, well, I'm not going to die in 3 or 4 days. And what can I do? Well, I can probably look around and figure out where I am and what's around me and what I can do as far as food if I have to eat something. There are a lot of edible things in the woods, and there's very few things that are completely poisonous to eat. And fiber, we all talk about fiber diet, and there's a lot of leaves and barks and pine trees, for instance, pine needles you can eat that are nutritious. Now you might get a little sick on things like that, so you got to be careful on the amount you eat. So you eat small amounts and you eat them more often. You don't sit down and gorge on something if you know that's edible, because that can make you sick. For instance, if you're in a tropical area and you see a banana tree, you're not going to eat 6 or 8 bananas, because that can make you sick. So you eat a little banana, then a couple of hours you eat another piece of banana. Or if you're in the north temperate zone, same with strawberries or blueberries or huckleberries or raspberries or June berries, all different kind of berries to eat. Then you eat a little bit, because a little bit more often you're not going to get sick. And the sickness you usually get is diarrhea or vomiting. Emetic is the word that you throw up. And so then you look for water or some type of fluid. Now, not only water comes out of springs and streams and things like that, but there's water in a lot of plants. So if you know what plants to eat, you know where the water is. And there's different ways you can develop your own water source. For instance, hot and cold. What does hot and cold do when it gets together? Produces condensation. Like right now, it was hot. The sun came out a little bit ago. It's about 3:30 in the afternoon, and we see above us a bunch of clouds coming in. Now, the reason why those clouds is up there because the air is cold and the ground is hot. So when that hot air hits that cold up top, what's going to happen? You're going to get condensation. So many times, just one little trick of the trade, you can dig a little hole in the ground, put a sheet across it if you have anything that's like a piece of canvas or something that's impervious to, that's like waterproof. You put that over top of the hole. The ground's cold, the air is hot. Pretty soon you have water dripping underneath that piece of canvas or cellophane or whatever you have over top of that hole. Now, you not always have that. But survival, the main thing is to keep calm, is not panic. So if you panic, what happens when you panic? You lose the mental prowess that you might have. You get excited and your blood pressure goes up, and that's not good. And you burn a lot more energy. So what happens when you burn energy? Energy has to come from your food source. So your body has so much reserve. So if you panic, you're using up that reserve a lot faster than you would if you don't panic. Common sense rules of surviving. Now, and common sense is probably the most important aspect. Common sense and logic when you survive. A person may not have the skills that I may have because I know a lot about edible plants and I know a lot about edible trees and I know about different ways you can build a fire. For instance, that's the next step. Once you get your shelter, you think about the food thing, then you've got to think about fire. Because what does fire do? Fire gives you warmth. Fire gives you a sense of not only warmth, but it's also a signal. Signal to people in the area, they might be able to see the fire. And also the sense of smell if they're hunting for you. And if you have a whistle or have something that you can make a noise with, it's best to do that. But don't just sit there and holler, because that just uses a lot of energy and nobody's probably going to hear you anyway. So you're best to make noise. How do you make noise? Well, you know how to make noise. You can throw rocks against rocks. You can take a club and bat a tree. Certain trees give off more noise than others. And so you can find some way to make a noise if you want to attract attention. So, and also, you should, if you can find a clearing somewhere where your shelter is, you always have a clearing, because if you're lost in 3 days, what's going to happen? Within those 3 days, your family or somebody's going to know that you're lost. So what happens then? Well, then they send out search parties. They send out people. There's a group of search and rescue places all around the world. And a lot of them are come by air. If you're in a remote area, they usually come by air. So if you're in an area that doesn't have has too many trees, how are they going to see you in the air? And how are they going to see a fire in the air? It's pretty difficult. So that's why you need a clearing, because if you have a clearing, if a plane goes over or something goes over or some rescue vehicle, you can get out there in the open.